Hello YouTube, welcome to this tutorial. In this video, actually I don't have any agenda, but I'm just gonna play with Firewall and just start off showing you some basic things that you can do with Firewall. Basically, CentOS 7 comes with Firewalld, and in previous versions of CentOS we used to have the IP tables package to manage the firewall. Both of these use netfilter kernel module underneath, but Firewalld is more dynamic. And let's get started. I'll show you some examples, some basic examples of how to open up a port in Firewall, add some rich rules. Let's get started. So I'm logged into one of my CentOS 7 virtual machine, CentVM01. So I've got one network interface, yet 0. So let's check if it's installed by default. So we have this Firewalld package, and if you want to look at the configuration, you can do rpm-qc Firewalld. So there you go, you've got these configuration files. And the main one is this one, firewalld.conf. If we take a look at that file, so it tells you what the default zone is and a couple other options. So basically you won't be needing to edit this file, but in case if you want, you can edit this file. Okay, let's check if Firewalld is running. So Firewalld service is running, and if you look here, this service is enabled by default. And the other way of checking if the firewall is running is using the firewall cmd command. Firewall cmd ---- state. That tells you that firewall is running. So we've got the firewall service running. So let's check what's allowed and what's not allowed in the default configuration. So if you do firewall cmd list all, it tells you the zone is public. I'll tell you how to see a list of zones. So the moment the default zone is public, so it says the zone is default and the zone is currently active. So we only got one network interface, so that interface is mapped to this firewall zone. And the services currently allowed are DHCP client and the SSH service. Okay, so to see what zones are available, do firewall cmd get zones. So I've got these different zones, and this one here, the public zone, is the default one. So for any firewall-cmd command, if you don't include the ---- zone option, so always it's going to affect the default zone, the currently active zone. Okay, it has also got a concept called services. You can not only add a port to firewall, you can add a service to firewall. In the back, the service is actually configured to open up a particular port. And to get a list of services currently configured, let's take a look. Firewall cmd get services. So if you look here, we have got the Kerberos service, LDAP, LDAPS, HTTP, MySQL, and all these services. So these services, if you want to take a look at the configuration of these services, they are in two different locations usually. User lib firewalld. So this is the default location, and if you want to create your own service, basically you need to put that inside etc firewalld. Let's take a look at what's inside the default folder user lib firewalld. So you can see services and zones. So let's go into services. So all these services, let's take a look what these XML files look like. So if you take mysql.xml, so this is the XML configuration file. It tells you the service name, the service description, and the protocol and which port. Okay, so let's say you want to open the port, the MySQL port 3306 on CenVM01. So the way to do is you can either add the port directly or you can add the service. So I'll show you each way. Firewall CMD zone equals public. You don't have to give this option. If you don't give this option, whichever zone is the default, that zone will get this configuration. To see which is your default zone, firewall cmd -- get default zone. That tells you public is your default zone. You can actually set a different zone as to be your default zone by using set default zone equals internal. Okay, that's done. And now if you do get default zone, your default zone has changed to internal. Let's change it back to public. Okay, so we need to add the MySQL port. So firewall cmd add port equals 3306 and the protocol TCP. So what you have done is you've added the port 3306 to the default zone public. If you look at firewall cmd list all, this will show you the configuration for the public zone. And to be more specific, you can include this option, but that's completely optional because anyway it's going to show you the settings for the default zone. So if you look under ports, so we've added 3306 TCP protocol. So let's remove it and add it as a service because you have got an XML configuration for MySQL service. So what do you want to remember the port? We can add directly the service. So to add the service, firewall cmd add service equals MySQL. And if you do firewall cmd, so you can see this under services. So MySQL is now opened in Firewall. Okay, let's remove it. Okay, before that I wanted to show you something else. So what we have done is we have changed the configuration. We have changed the runtime configuration. So if you reboot this machine, these configurations are not going to survive. So you check that the firewall cmd list all command shows you that you have added the MySQL service. Let's do firewall reload. Firewall cmd reload, and if you do this, you'll lose all the configuration because we haven't added this permanently. We've just added it to the runtime. And if you do list all, MySQL service is gone. So to make it permanent, you're adding this service MySQL, and you need to add -- permanent to make it permanent. So what it does is it just changed the configuration, but it's not active now. If you do list all, you won't see the MySQL. So you need to do the reload. You just change the configuration, you need to reload it to have the effect. There you go, MySQL. So if you want to check something, don't add minus minus permanent option, or if it's going to be a temporary, don't add that option. But in exams like RHC, RHCSA, don't forget to add the minus minus permanent option. That's very important. And if you want to have that effect immediately, you need to reload the firewall configuration with firewall cmd minus minus reload. And there is one other thing I wanted to show you. There is an option you can pass to the firewall cmd command. Say, have you got httpd? Okay, httpd is running. Do we have any? Okay, we've got index.html file. Okay, what I'm going to show you here is okay, so before that I'll also show you a couple other things. Say if you want to add a series of ports, so we've seen adding firewall cmd add port equals 3306/TCP. So we added the MySQL port 3306 to the firewall. So if you want to add multiple ports, you can use a format like this, separated by comma. So say I'm going to add port 5000, 6000, added, and if you list it, you have these ports. You don't have to use that command for every single port. You can just group the commands, group the ports in a single command. So this is different ports. If you want to open a series of ports, you can also use this format. You don't need the curly braces for that. Say I want to open up ports 5000 to 5010, 5000-5010. So you see here, so we've added the ports 5000 to 5010 and all these ports. Let's do firewall cmd reload. To clear the configuration. Similarly, you added a service MySQL. You can add multiple services in the same command. Add service equals MySQL HTTP HTTPS LDAP. Warning, already enabled. Okay, no problem. Okay, so I think MySQL is already enabled. That's the error we got. So HTTP, HTTPS and LDAP. So this is another way of adding the services. You can add multiple services in a single command. And you can do the same for the remove service options as well. Okay, what else can we try? We can actually try doing a port forwarding to let's see how we can configure port forwarding in Firewalld. So I have a HTTPD service running on CenVMO1. It's running on port 80, but port 80 is not opened in the firewall. I don't have ports or HTTP service opened in the firewall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up port 8080 and I'm going to forward all traffic to port 8080 and redirect that to port 80. So let's open the port 8080 first. Add port 8080 TCP. So we've added the port 8080, but actually nothing is running in port 8080. Okay, so now let's configure Firewalld to forward all traffic on port 8080 to port 80. Firewall CMT, add forward port equals. So first tell which port you want to listen on. Port 8080 colon, and what's the protocol? Proto equals TCP, and to port equals 80. So if you do list, so you've got this options, the forward ports. So what we are doing is anything coming on to the port 8080 will be redirected to the port 80 on the same host. That's why we don't have any to address. So if you want to forward all traffic on 8080 to port 80 on a different host, you would add to address equals 192.168.122, say some other IP 103, something like that. Okay, so our port forwarding rule is active currently, and let's try it. So this is my host machine, and I'm going to browse CentVM01. It says no route to host because we don't have HTTP port or port 80 opened on CentVM01. We only have the 8080 port open, and that will redirect us to the port 80. So let's check port 8080. There you go. So this is how you do the port forwarding. I'm going to remove that. So to remove the port forwarding, nope. Okay, I can actually copy this and change it to remove forward port, or I can just do firewall CMD reload, because we haven't added the option ---- permanent when we did it in the previous step. But this is to show you how to remove the previous settings. Firewall CMD list all. We are back to where we were. Let's also remove the MySQL. Okay, and I can actually show you a couple of rich rules. So these are the basic rules that you can configure on Firewalld. There are lots of others, but these will be used most commonly. You can also use the rich rules. By using rich rules, you can extend the firewall, and you can configure it dynamically. More complex rules can be done via rich rules. I'll show you one such example. So I'm going to configure. So I've got CentVM01, and on the other tab I've got CentVM02, CentVM03. Back in CentVM01, I want to configure the firewall to allow all traffic from CentVM02, and I want to block all traffic from CentVM03. This can be done by rich rules. I'm going to add a rich rule. Firewall CMT, add rich rule. Within single quotes, start with rule. You need to specify what class of IP by family. Family equals, within double quotes, IPv4. So whenever you use source address, whenever you're going to specify an IP address in the rich rule, you need to have this option, family equals IPv4. In other cases it's optional, but in this case it's mandatory. Family equals IPv4, source address equals So the IP address of CentVMO2 is 192.168.122.102 and accept. So this basically says accept all traffic from the IPv4 address 192.168.122.102. Let me also add another rich rule that says all traffic from CentVMO3, just drop it. Okay, if you do firewall cmt list all, so we have these two rich rules. If you just want to see the list the rich rules for this particular zone, you can do firewall cmd list rich rules. So it will list you the rich rules you have configured for this particular zone. So we've configured that and the rules are active. So let's go and check. But before that, this zone, let's also, we don't have any forward ports. Okay, so let's enable the HTTP service. Firewall cmt add service HTTP, and we'll remove the 8080 port. Remove port. Okay, we have the HTTP, the port 80 opened. Let's go and check from CentVMO2 and CentVMO3. Okay, from CentVMO2, have I got curl? Yes. Okay, curl. Okay, that's working. Yep. So that's the firewall blocking the traffic from CentVMO3. Let's try to ping. Okay, so it completely blocked all traffic from CentVMO3. So this is basically I wanted to show you. So we've got all the traffic from CentVMO2. Okay, so what else I can show you here? Okay, let's create a new service. So say I've got an application called my application, which is running on port 7000 maybe, and I need to add a service configuration in Firewalld. So let's go into etc Firewalld. I'm going to copy. You only need 3 tags: the short description and the port. The mysql.xml configuration file we saw earlier will be the best thing to copy. So I'm going to copy the MySQL service configuration file, which is in user lib firewalld services mysql.xml. So we are in etc firewalld. We need to copy it into the services directory and rename that to myapplication.xml, and so this is the short description that tells you what the service is for. My application, and description, it's my test application. It runs on port 7000 and protocol TCP. Okay, so if you do firewall cmd get services, it should list the this new my application service. Nope. Let's reload Firewall. There you go. So this is the new service that you have configured. So now you can use that in the firewall cmd command. Firewall cmd add service equals my application done. There you go. So you have added the application. And if you want to know more about Firewall, the Firewall CMD, there's always this man page, man Firewall CMD. This will show you lots of different things which you can try, but the things that I've shown you, I think those are the things that you would need in your day-to-day life. Those are the most commonly used commands, but you can also find some advanced commands here. So you can map a source address to a particular zone. So you can also make use of the direct rules. It's like the IP table rules. These are the exit codes. If you want to script this, you can script it, and the various exit codes from the firewall cmd commands. There is one other thing I wanted to show you. There is an option called panic. I can actually panic options. So what it does is, if you pass the option ---- panic on, it will drop all the packets. So it basically shuts the firewall. So no outgoing, no incoming. In case of emergency, you can use this panic on options. So let's try and do that. Let's query if our system is in the panic mode, which is not, obviously, because I'm connected to that system from my host machine using SSH. But let's just check. Firewall CMD query panic. So it's not in the panic mode. And if you want to, I'll show you from my virtual machine console, because it's going to drop the SSH connection. Let's enable the panic mode. Firewall CMD panic on. Success. If you do firewall CMD query panic, it says it's in the panic mode. Let's go back to the console and see. Nope, I can't type anything because it doesn't accept any network traffic. Okay, let's stop the panic mode with the option ---- panic off. Done. Okay, I think I might need to no. Okay, I've got the SSH connection back. Cool. And I think Firewalld is really cool to learn, and it's not also so difficult to learn. But if you want to stick with IP tables, you can disable Firewalld and go with IP tables. But I would suggest using Firewalld as you can do a lot of complex rules. So if you want to disable Firewalld, you disable it, and that's not enough. You also need to mask the service so it doesn't get enabled by accident. Okay, that's done. So yes, now you're free to use the IP tables commands. I think IP tables, yes, you've got the IP tables command. You can start using that. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to show you. Okay, I can quickly show you a couple of the commands. I've only got one network interface, and if you want, you can assign a particular network interface to a particular firewall zone. And if you want to check in what zone ETH0 is, you can use the command firewall cmd get zone of interface. So it says ETH0 is in the public zone, and if you want to list the interfaces that are in a the other way of finding this, firewall cmd zone equals whichever zone you want to query. So in this case, let me query the public zone. List interfaces. What interfaces are attached to this zone? It says it's ETH0. You can change the interface. You can map this interface to a different zone. Say you can do like this: firewall cmd zone equals internal, change interface equals ETH0. Okay, that's done. So now if you do firewall cmd get zone of interface ETH0, see which zone the ETH0 interface is attached to. It says it's internal because we changed the interface for the internal zone. So the zone public, we don't have any interfaces attached to that zone. So this is how you play with the Firewalld. Just I would suggest you having a look at the man pages for Firewalld, Firewall CMD, and if you are a fan of GUI, you can use firewall config command. I haven't used that even once. Is it called firewall config? Nope. Firewalld config? No. Oh, damn it! I'm on the minimal version, so I won't be having all this. So it should be either firewall config or firewalld config, but I hate using the GUI application, so I don't know what it is. And I think that's all I wanted to show you guys. And thanks for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye.